What's good? What's good, my ghouls and goblins? Wake up! Hey,
bro! God,
wake up! You can't fall asleep, not yet.
all right.
It's not even close
I had
to
a
your
nightmare. We were talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Oh,
Woo! That was terrifying.
that was a close call.
Woo.
Welcome back, Connor. Good morning. Welcome to Reely Scared. Thankfully, you've woken up and you are now joining us for the weekly horror movie live streaming podcast here on Watt Real Entertainment. Connor, how are you?
Fantastic.
Good. You got some beauty
It's a good
sleep
day.
in?
What?
You got some beauty sleep in?
Yeah, a little bit.
Very
Slept in
good.
today.
I could use some. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I'm so hot.
It was obnoxiously hot today. I was like, it was so hot. I was getting like pissed off, more so than usual while driving.
A little
I was
road rage.
getting so angry.
I'm having a particularly tough time this week because I'm no longer in that work from home lifestyle. So I'm having to like regularly enter society every single day. And I'm having a terrible time acclimating to like waking up, putting on actual clothes, going outside, driving a car. I'm having a really rough time contributing to society. You know, it's not worth it. It's not worth the contribution.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth going out there, but I'm trying my best. Thankfully, I'm back. I'm where I'm at most home, sitting in front of my computer doing a show about horror movies. This is easy. We got favorite ghoul in the chat. Happy Thursday, ghouls and goblins and Watt fam. Sending so much. I love, I imagine, and stay spooky. Thank you, Justin, my favorite ghoul. Great to see you in the chat. Thank you for watching. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in either live or listening to the recording after the fact on video and audio. If you have not listened to Reely Scared before or have not tuned in before, we have a special guest on this show every single week to discuss a horror film of their choice. It could be absolutely anything, and we could be talking with absolutely anyone. If you are new here, be sure to do all the things that podcasts love for you to do. You know, you could follow us, subscribe. You could like it. You could ring that dang bell, perhaps. That's something that podcasts love for you to do. What else do they love for you to do, Connie Kruger?
Well, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, you can, listen to us, listen to some of our previous episodes, and then just leave us a little cute review.
Just an itty bitty bedtime story. It's getting late. We don't need you to spin an epic for us. Nobody has time for that. But if you want to leave just an itty bitty cutie to let us know how we're doing, we'd appreciate it. Of course, we've got the Streamlabs rocking along the bottom. If you want to support the channel, support the show, feel free to donate at our Streamlabs, streamlabs.com/whoarethe-podcasts. It helps us out. And you don't necessarily need to for us to read your comments or to look at the chat or pull you up on the screen and respond. You don't need to do that. We're going to treat you all the same with all the love that we always have. But if you want to support our channel and our show, that's a great way to do it. Streamlabs.com/whoarethe-podcasts. Quick announcement before we get the show started. We had talked about it last week. Everybody talked about it on a variety of shows, but we did, of course, hit 250 subscribers on YouTube, which is so awesome. I feel like just a few weeks ago, we were celebrating 100, a small milestone to many channels to be sure. But for us, it's a pretty damn big deal, and we're super excited about it. We are having a celebration stream that was originally scheduled for this Saturday. We have rescheduled it to happen on June 26th on our YouTube and our Twitch. Just a general hangout, We're going to have guests on. We don't know. We got some surprises lined up. It's just going to be, an appreciation stream, a hangout, a celebration. It's going to be a fun time. June 26th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, a Saturday night. Come hang out with us and see what kind of debauchery and trouble we get into. It's going to be good. It's going to be a late one.
Yeah.
We have a fantastic guest on tonight's show. I'm excited for this one and a huge movie to talk about. WatCon. In some ways it could be WatCon, Jessica, a digital WatCon that everybody's invited to. Very, very special. Usually WatCon's very exclusive and confined to like 6 of us that congregate in Ohio, but anybody could come to this WatCon. It's great. We have a great guest tonight, someone I'm very excited to have joining us, and we're talking about a huge movie. We said it before, the new concept of this show this year, picking a different movie every week, just kind of out of the wild. There's no real order or coherence to it. It's just, what our guest wants to talk about. And somehow we've gotten this far without covering any of the major tentpole slasher franchises. Nobody has picked out any of the Friday the 13th movies, Halloween movies, Scream, and of course, Nightmare on Elm Street. No one had picked it before. And in some ways that was kind of exciting that we had missed it for so long, because it's we were finding all these other, sort of more obscure movies and things we hadn't seen before. But at the same time, I was I can't wait to finally get one of those movies, because wow, that's everybody knows what that is, and there's so much to talk about and unpack. We've got one here tonight. We're gonna have our buddy Ty Lieberman on to talk about Wes Craven's original 1984, not the remake. So that's okay. Don't be scared. The original A Nightmare on Elm Street. So let's bring our man in here. He is the Tyrant in the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, a card-carrying member of the Finstock Exchange. Wolves and Goblins, put your hands together for Mr. Ty Lieberman.
I locked the door and every window tight. I thought that everything would be all right, but when I shut my eyes, he'll find a way. Somebody wake me. Help me get away. It's a nightmare. Just a dream. No, it's a nightmare. Just a dream.
Beautiful. And
that was the closing song of Nightmare on Elm Street. Song probably written in the studio within 4 minutes before it was recorded.
This, as the kids say, the soundtrack of this film is a bop. It is moving at a wild 80s synth party pace.
It's no John Carpenter score, but it's in the same stadium.
Yeah, it's coming close. It's definitely handing CDs out in the parking lot at the very least.
It's in the parking lot of the stadium. $5. Yeah. Park here and you get a CD.
Welcome to the welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome to my show. Thank you. The Tired Show.
I'm very tired. It's becoming clear, I think.
Well, after you watch this movie, you won't want to sleep, Taylor.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? That's the dissonance here. I have to deal with. You guys, this is it. It's the thing that everybody in every one of these movies says, which is, I'm gonna go to sleep. You gotta watch me, okay? It never goes well. They try it. Everybody tries it in every single one of these movies. It just never works out. So keep an eye on me if I fall asleep. Okay, make sure I'm okay. Welcome to the show, Ty. That's better. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
I am doing all right.
All right. We can work with that. We've done worse. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.
And get a chance to,
I've wanted to be on a podcast for a long, long time, especially a movie podcast. And if you had given me 14,000 guesses about what movie I would be talking about, this would have not been one of them.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I had forgotten that I had chosen this movie. You had reminded me earlier. You said you're going to ask me why you chose it. I was like, I didn't choose this, but I did. Now I remember the conversation was. I don't watch a lot of scary movies. It doesn't mean I'm not knowledgeable about them. I just don't seek them out. Right. So I wanted to find something that had a huge cultural impact that I could still watch for the first time. And I put this movie on last night and watched it for 10 minutes and got a little scared. So I watched it this morning.
Yeah, this is definitely an intense one to watch in the nighttime. So morning's not a bad time to watch Nightmare.
And I watched it with subtitles on.
That's beat for beat. That's exactly what I did. Same exact thing. Threw it on at about 4 a.m. I was like, oh, I forgot how much this scares me. And so I stopped it after about 20, 30 minutes, went to sleep, slept in, watched it this morning with subtitles on. So we're in the same boat.
I was as an exchange student in Brazil in high school. And again, I never sought out scary movies, but I was tricked into going to see the Blair Witch Project with some friends.
Oh, okay.
And it is a very intense movie, but it was also one of the best experiences I had in the theater because people were screaming.
Yeah.
But you have the screen goes completely black, but then it will be like scared whimpering. Hello. And there's something about seeing the subtitles that kind of breaks the spell of the film just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the rest of the audience who maybe was more accustomed to watching movies that way, watching American films with subtitles, maybe they have more of an acceptance of it. But I always found that subtitles break it up just enough for me. So someone with a little bit of a weak stomach doesn't like roller coasters, doesn't like too many thrills. I'm able to get through it just kind of using subtitles as a little bit of a crutch.
That's a deeper reasoning for the subtitles than I'm just deaf.
Well, I think depending on how fast of a reader you are, they give you, it can be like kind of an alarm, if you can kind of get ahead of the moment by reading it first, you have that like half second to kind of
if Freddy says behind you and he's not on screen yet, you're gonna know, okay, Freddy's coming.
Yeah.
They're just,
or Fred, as the opening credits say, Fred Krueger.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He's credited simply as Fred. He's going for kind of a more mature, serious take in this one, I suppose.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, we might as well get into like the lore of this. I mean, since we're bringing that up, Wes Craven didn't mean for, in this movie, Fred Krueger, or as it's become known as Freddy Krueger, to be this big icon. Never intended it. Didn't intend for him to be like jokey or anything, even though he does have like those one-liners in this one, but it just kind of took off to his surprise, and then Freddy Krueger became Freddy Krueger and the icon he is now. It's weird how it took on a life of its own, especially that character.
Yeah, we got Jessica in the chat. That's the exact reason she put subtitles on when she watches a scary movie. That's great. I didn't
wait. Now we gave two reasons. Jessica, are you deaf or are you scared?
I can assure you, it's because she's scared.
Okay,
I can promise you that much. Yeah, it is interesting to come back. Oh, Matt. Fun fact: my grandfather's name was Fred, and he raised my mother and sister in Elm Street. Ooh.
That is terrifying.
Spooky. Yeah, I actually didn't learn that until recently. Was that Nightmare on Elm Street was in Wes Craven's vision always meant to be a one-off movie.
Yep.
That did not, he doesn't do any of them again until the 90s when New Nightmare comes out.
Which is my personal favorite Nightmare on Elm Street. New Nightmare is my favorite.
Huh.
It's and you can see his thoughts on it, because like the entire concept of New Nightmare is like, hey, this thing I built became something really stupid, and like, how do you reclaim it and make it scary again? That's like, it's very much still in the same Scream wheelhouse, so you can totally see where he's at creatively in that and those years.
That's super meta.
Right. And Ty, like you'd mentioned, we kind of collectively figured out this. Sometimes people show up and they just know, bang, like, this is what I want to talk about. This is the one that's been on my mind. We kind of collectively found our way here. And for you, I think, like you said, you wanted to spend some time with one of the classics, something that's sort of universally revered that maybe you hadn't spent as much time with.
Specifically, there was one question that's always bothered me, which is why in elementary school, I was born in 1982, so we're talking 88 through like 92. Why was Freddy Krueger consistently the most popular Halloween costume among kids? Were they seeing this movie? And if they weren't seeing this movie, what about Freddy Krueger snuck into the mainstream and made him such an iconic figure in horror and in culture in general? Yeah. And I'm still not sure I understand. I have a little more of an understanding after watching this movie, but I am not completely sure.
Right. Well, my mom was 14 when this movie came out, and I believe she saw this at like a drive-in, and it was like she was terrified of it. And I think with the drive-ins, it was like easier for kids to sneak into movies.
Stowaways in cars.
Yeah, it's kind of like the height of the drive-in. So I think kids were just sneaking in and watching this because they were like, you need to see this movie. New Line was about to go bankrupt before this movie came out, and this movie saved New Line. And like New Line's like joke tagline was "the house that Freddy built." So I think it was something that captured these kids, and especially with the nightmare aspect, you can't escape them. With like Jason and Michael, you can outrun him.
Well, what was interesting about, I've never seen either of these movies. So first of all, he's a child murderer. I thought he was a child molester. I think in the 2010 with Rooney, the one with Rooney Mara, I believe he's a molester instead. So I don't know why kids would gravitate to a child murder. But what I thought was a little bit cheating, the way Freddy moves, he runs like the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz. He's not exactly a fearsome, like, physical beast, but he cheats because he can appear out of anything. The way Michael Myers, like in theory, or the shark from Jaws, you could stick a tracker on him and you kind of understand where he's going to be. Mm-hmm. Freddy, because he's in this dream space, he can really appear anywhere. He can appear behind the mirror, under the bed,
and he can
materialize at any moment. So I found that a little harder to track in my mind because like he could just appear at any scene for any reason.
And not only that, like the threat of being killed is there. Like he's going to kill you, but he's making jokes about it the whole time. Like he's playing with these teenagers, like playing with them and making jokes before he kills them. Like that's I think that is terrifying. Like someone who is not like imposing themselves really, and they're making light of this dire situation and making these one-line jokes. I just find that terrifying.
Right, because you're going to die, but you also are not afforded any real dignity. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like the threat thinks you are such a joke that he'll even like delay killing you for the sake of having fun, like, or making a joke, or like, having a good punchline. He'll even hold off on finishing the job for like a couple days, because you're just so ensnared in it, and you are going to fall asleep again eventually. So you are going to come back and be in his clutches once again, even if you escape the first time, which we see a lot of. I mean, it's common in all the movies, but we see it a lot, especially in this first one. And this is a great question too, because I have been thinking about this all week. Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff's Nightmare on My Street. Which was that actually like tied to one of the movies?
I should have looked at that. That's a great question. I forgot about that.
Was that actually tied to one of the movies, or was it just like a funsy? I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it. I'm trying to think of like if it was like in the credits of one of them. It's certainly not this one, but I should look. What year did?
Let's Google it. Let's stop the podcast and we'll come back and so we'll just take a tip now.
Nightmare on My Street. When did that come out? That was 1988. Okay, so yeah, they were.
That's probably like one of the later.
Oh
ones.
Nope. They got sued.
Did they?
It was not a welcome. It was not a welcome song.
Right. It wasn't a welcome crossover, and even more fascinating.
It was an unwelcome crossover.
I'm just learning that Kids Bop did a version of it in 2012, so I can't wait to listen to that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we should do an unwelcome crossover where we just listen to that right now.
New Line run by Robert Shea. So this movie funded the Lord of the Rings trilogy, essentially. So the good people of New Zealand can thank this movie for that. Don't think I didn't notice Lynn Shay as the teacher in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets a tiny little spot, and obviously becomes a scream queen in her own right throughout the years.
She's kind of the biggest horror actress of the last 15 years. You could argue Vera Farmiga or Shawnee Smith or somebody, but she's right up there.
Yeah, she's kind of secretly carrying the torch. And I remember she does pop up again in one of the later Elm Street movies. I think it might be New Nightmare. It's like a different character. I think she's in that one too. I guess pretty much all the actors come back in some respect to New Nightmare. It's kind of the bit of it. It's funny that you mentioned earlier that kids were wearing costumes and there was this whole mania associated with Freddy. And I also don't know exactly what that is, because I can tell you when we were trying to figure out which movie this was, I was drawn to, or which movie to pick rather. I was drawn to this because it was one of the first, if I had to nail it down, this is one of the first horror movies to truly like traumatize me as a kid.
Oh, so when did you see this movie for the first time, Taylor?
I wouldn't be able to nail down an exact age, but like probably you couldn't have been much older than 10, if even that. And I've mentioned it kind of, I've mentioned, sort of my backstory in horror movies, which was like, we have, or we'd had in Northeast Ohio area, this sort of midnight movie show, like, not quite horror host per se, but it was a show called Big Chuck and Little John. And they would have skits between movies and they make jokes, but they would play midnight movies. And sometimes they were horror movies. And it was always me staying up past my bedtime, like sneaking to the TV and seeing whatever was there. But whatever it was on, I was never something I should see. It was a movie.
So you saw this on your own reconnaissance?
Yes. I Nightmare on Elm Street was one of those. And whenever it was a horror movie, what I would always do to myself, every single time, was I would put the movie on And like I would take all of 5 minutes to know like this was not a good idea. But I would have lost the remote or been like too petrified to get up and go turn it off. So I would be held captive for the hour and a half, 2 hour runtime and watch the whole movie. And this one was so bad because then when it was over, you're a kid, you see something scary, the dark becomes scarier. It's harder to fall. But like this was specifically like, oh my God, I can't go to sleep. Like I can remember just being frozen in place like all night and not able to sleep and having an active fear of Freddy Krueger specifically for a long time following that. So I don't know what happened to the rest of America that they were like, I like this guy and I want to party with him and dress up like him, because that wasn't me at all.
I wish I had done it on my own, but I was subjected to this. I've mentioned it before. My grandpa had like all these VHS tapes, so many, like hundreds and hundreds of them, so many that he had them categorized and numbered in this book. And I would stay there on the weekends, and over the course of like 7 weekends, just watched every single one.
Yeah.
It was actually a whole year.
Oh, wow.
We watched these, and then like the Friday the 13th. But I remember
I keep forgetting how cold Ohio is.
Yeah. But yeah, so over the course of like 7 weeks, just watched all 7 of them at like 9 years old. And just remember being petrified.
Oh, so they did scare you. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know how scary. I mean, maybe it's because I went to where'sthejump.com prior to watching the movie, but I didn't find it particularly. Like, every time I sit down for a scary movie, I'm always frightened. And if I get through the movie, I'm like, oh, that wasn't scary at all. Like, whatever has happened during the film is like past me. And it's like, this isn't scary. Shining's not scary. Silence of the Lambs, these movies are fine. But they were terrifying when I watched it the first time.
Yeah, I think we've been so desensitized at this point where, like, if I saw this for the first time now, I don't think I would be as scared. But just, like, thinking back on how scared I was at 9 years old, watching this for the first time, I think, like, those experiences still stuck with me. So watching this for, God, the millionth time, like, it still scares me just because I think back on that.
Well, so that's a question. If you see a movie 4 times, are you still scared the 4th time, or are you just watching different things from it? Or are you remembering the initial feeling when you're watching it?
I think a scary movie is especially scary if it still scares you over and over again.
Yeah.
There are some that will still scare you, but there are some that have that first viewing effect. But this is one of those that just sticks with me and scares me. But like you said, Blair Witch, the Blair Witch Project, that one, no matter how many times I watch it, that will scare me. So it takes a special kind of scary movie.
I agree. This one still does kind of, I watched it last night, and obviously, I know very well what's going to happen. I've got the plot down. And so that experience is always going to be different. It's always different when you see it as a kid too, because like your own perception of what's truly possible, the barrier between reality and fiction feels a lot thinner. Right. And so you can actually scare yourself into believing you are in danger after watching a horror movie when you're younger. Whereas now it's a lot easier to kind of rationale yourself back and not be kept up by it. But I still can kind of feel, whatever residual energy is left. Like I can still sort of feel it when I watch this again. I can like feel myself there for the first time in front of the crappy, little CRT TV, trembling in the middle of the night. Because I had a very like irrational truth, like fear. I can very specifically remember for ages, like going to walk up the stairs at night, and always there's these windows by, my family's house, and I would look out and like always expect to see Freddy Krueger in the window, like looking at, like I would actually check, and I'd always, and it would be something I'd hesitate to do because I always genuinely believed he might be there this time. Like that was something I carried with me.
Oh my God. Yeah. My grandpa just purposely wanted to scare me and my sister all the time. Like when we were watching Friday the 13th, when I was, right after we watched all these, he would do that just randomly from the other room. And I'm like, God, like I would scream. And then he had a ghost face costume, and he would just wear that around randomly and scare us. And this one, like he would just try to scare us, and so like I am just traumatized by this this movie.
Are you trying? There were some things in the movie that seemed deliberately, like they were deliberately catering to a horror audience. Like for no reason, Freddy would cut himself. Green blood would come out. There'd be like worms and snakes and animals pouring out of him, like the decay of his body. It didn't really fit. It seemed random, like they were added just for that effect. Is that what scares you about this movie? Like that aspect, or what specifically do you find frightening about this film?
Just the fact that you can't escape him. Everybody has to sleep, so he's going to get you. It's kind of the original Bye Bye Man.
The Bye Bye Man. The see you later dude.
If you believe in him enough, like he's gonna get you. He's gonna show up in your dreams and he's gonna get you. Like with Jason, I'm not going to summer camp. I'm not going to summer camp that often. Like I'm safe.
That's a great point about Jason. Not like he's very tied to his spot. It's like, well, if you just don't go there,
Michael, I'm not in Haddonfield. Like I'm safe. Freddy, I gotta sleep.
Well, and this is Springwood, Ohio. Is his except for there is one really quick one scene in the movie takes place in Venice Beach. Johnny Depp and Heather Langenkamp are walking across a bridge talking about dreams over the Eastern Canal in Venice Beach. There's palm trees. It looks nothing like Springwood, Ohio. So I don't know if anyone else notices that when
Springwood, Ohio, very beachy.
Yeah, I miss those long summer walks through
through the canals of Springwood.
Yeah,
Springwood, a great name for the trope of the virginal heroine. Springwood, virginal sex, and then everyone getting killed. I thought that was funny. I want to know. Sorry, I feel like I don't mean to host the show. I am curious to know still why Freddy Krueger broke out and how he changed over the course of the films, which I have not seen as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is such
what is the evolution of Freddy Krueger across this one, Freddy's Revenge, Dream Warriors, Dream Master, Dream Child, Final Nightmare, New Nightmare, etc.
Yeah, and I'll let Connor kind of take this one because I know because Connor's the big Craven guy. Of the two, I mean, I love Wes Craven as any horror fan probably should, but Connor's definitely he's the man. I mean, I know he's really excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, I don't know if we can really pinpoint it on why he broke out. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, why has there not been a new slasher, like new horror icon, like our Freddys and our Jasons and our Michaels? We haven't had one of those.
You're right.
It's so interesting what made Freddy and the ones following it so big. What made them break out? And it's hard to pinpoint because we're not growing up in that time. Like,
no, I guess Jigsaw is the closest one, but even that was the
closest one, really. Yeah.
And Jigsaw is tricky too because it's like, okay, a lot of people think of like the puppet, but like it's not the puppet that's killing people. It's it's the Kramer character, and like he's not in half of them. It's not as clean as the other ones are.
Yeah.
Right?
What I think it's mainly Craven's like his wit and his writing and his direction. He just has this knack for driving at the heart of what scares the kids growing up. He's done it time and time again. Like with this, he's scaring the kids growing up in the 80s. He just had his finger on the pulse, rest in peace. But he did again in the 90s with Scream. He just knows what scares people. So I think it's really credited to Craven because, the remake was god awful because you didn't have Craven. You didn't have Craven's touch. It didn't scare people because one, it was a rehash of the original, and two, you don't have Craven. Craven just knows how to scare people, and I think that's mainly why Freddy broke out, because he just knew what was scary in that time.
I think Freddy, when you think of where sort of the slasher subgenre, because I think by now, 1984, it's really kind of crystallized and become a thing. Like people know what it is. Now the Halloween movies exist. Friday the 13th is happening, and sort of the slasher archetype, which is the silent, masked individual, doesn't really have a complex agenda. They're just this brute force of nature cutting through the movie and everybody that's in it. And then you have this guy show, which is funny because you come back to this one, and that again, Craven's idea was still not that he'd be this funny man. It was he wanted to give him more personality because he thought that'd be scarier if he actually did have a personality and was able to really express himself as like a truly evil individual, not just like you had mentioned the shark in Jaws, right? It's like it's just there's no reasoning or understanding with it. It just is. Whereas this, it's like there's a person in there, and somehow that could be even scarier to realize that there's intention and there's motivation and there's actually joy rather than Michael Myers, whose mere existence just seems to be murder, and that's all there is to it. Whereas Freddy was more imperceivable, but also could engage you. And it's just different, having one of these kinds of characters speak and joke. And like you said, you see him run around like a little weirdo early, like but also there's this weird surreal element to it as well, where it's like, there's no rules with him. You can't nail down.
He lets his victims attack him. He's cutting off his fingers. He's letting Nancy rip his face off. Or that wasn't Nancy. That was Tina, wasn't it?
That was Tina. That was early.
Yeah.
Earlier. Well, yeah, it was an earlier one.
But still, like he lets them, do harm to him to show like you can't do anything.
So it's the lack of rules that make him scary. Yeah. I think part of the appeal for kids, who again I don't know why they're attracted to that, the simplicity of the costume, a hat, a sweater, and a glove. It's three things. One of them's kind of fun to make, the glove, and then the hat and the sweater. The glove. So one of the questions I had going into the film was, how do they justify this glove? How do they explain it? It's literally the first thing they show is him putting this glove together in this fictional boiler room. So they addressed it right away. And I think, to me, I think that is the most memorable and the smartest part of this film is the glove as a signifier. Here's Freddy. You see the knives coming around the corner. You see the glove in shadow. It just becomes a signifier of him coming around the corner, him always being there without having to show Freddy all the time. And it's something that can be repeated. If you see the glove at like a Hard Rock Cafe, you know exactly what movie or what series it's from. And to have one object so associated with a character in a franchise is so smart. I mean, obviously, as you said, he didn't know Freddy Krueger was going to be the breakout character, but that just became like the, just the symbol for the whole series.
Yeah.
Wow, he was so bored he left. I can't believe it.
Yeah, he was like, God.
That was my big monologue, and he just I used the word signifier, and he chased him away.
Yeah, he was like, I'm done.
Oh, wow.
But no, the same goes for like Jason and those. Like they have their the hockey mask and the butcher knife. But I think everything up until this point, horror-wise, was a actual living being that is just coming after you. Yeah. And there's a threat up until the point. But this one, it brought in this new aspect of the dreams. And I stop me if I'm just going in circles, but it's just like,
oh no, Taylor will leave it. Taylor will leave if he's bored of you.
Yeah. But you just can't escape him. And it's one of those things, it's a deeper discussion to be had about why, kids, teens, young adults, they go to horror movies specifically to be scared. Like if someone goes to a horror movie and it's not scary, they're like, that was the worst movie ever. I wasn't scared. So like it's one of those deeper conversations, like why do we want to be scared? And I think that once we get to that, we'll find out why Freddy has become such a huge icon.
I think also with, when you think, especially somebody who saw this as a kid, when you think of how it treats horror and that it's literally like, it's sort of preying on the kind of stuff you fear as a kid. It's quite literally like a take on the boogeyman and the things that come to get you in the night, and that you can't really differentiate between your dreams and reality, and that a dream can really truly scare you in a way that you wake up in fear for your life, which is a experience I think that you get away from the older you get. But there's something so scary and unpredictable about dreams that they can still shake you even in your adult life. Because it's that there's some of yourself in there too, right? It's based on your own memories, experiences, your own traumas and fears, and suddenly there's something sentient that exists in them and will use all of that against you. And as a kid, I just, it part of it is the way that anything can happen in these movies, and it does feel like it's played up, and it is quite silly at times, like, right, him slicing his fingers off or,
watch this.
Yeah. It's like, there's no, like Jason or Michael, they're just so, I'm coming to get you and I'm going to get you. And once I have, it's on to the next one. But this guy, it's like, he's got a whole routine. He's doing this because it brings him joy and pleasure. And somehow that was so much scarier to me, because I did eventually start doing like scary Halloween costumes. I remember I did dress, interestingly enough, I dressed up as Ghostface. I remember so for some reason that I had that experience with Scream, but not so much with Nightmare on Elm Street, because I was just too scared. I wouldn't even want to engage with it in that way. I'd be too scared. I think even though it's not a movie that kids should probably see under any circumstance, coming to it really was like exactly the kind of movie that would truly scare a child so deeply. At least in my experience, it certainly was. And it is kind of funny though, because you go back and now you see it is kind of silly and camp. But this one is still by far the most straightforward one. Ty, I know you'd asked earlier. You were kind of curious of the evolution.
I'm still curious. Before we break down the actual plot of this film and the aesthetic of it, I am curious to know, because I've never seen the other movies, what happens to Freddy Krueger, where he essentially becomes a vaudeville comedian by the end of the series, where he's like, told you I was gonna kill him.
Yeah, because that seems to be
how does he evolve into the Crypt Keeper?
Right. I mean, that seems to be like, Craven gets removed from it so fast because he never, yes, by all means, he never envisioned.
Yes, I've not been drinking wine.
Yeah, about a brand 30 pack of the
I've been drinking
Natter Day pineapple.
Connor's got his Natter Day, so he's right in the pocket here. And also, there's been a lot going on in the chat here that we missed. A lot of debate against whether The Shining is scary.
I would say for the chat.
I would say it's very scary. And Jessica,
I don't think The Shining's scary twice.
I would just that's the one I actually do always engage.
I think The Shining is scary.
I always do engage with it on a frightened level. Jessica says she's thoroughly enjoying the way that Ty thinks. What a great compliment! I've never seen it. Nobody's ever said something so nice about a guest on our chat before.
Well, if you can fake interest and curiosity, you can be friends with anyone.
And she agrees. It's a great film. In any case. Freddy's, I think a lot of it has to do with Craven's sensibility and vision getting removed from it. And then it becomes, the studio New Line handing these films out to different directors and kind of taking the worst lessons from the first film of what worked, why did it work, and, leaning into those as hard as they can. It's because he is still a comparatively kind of silly character, that he's having fun. And the others, it's like they really are fully formed like bits. Like they are truly goofy. There's one where he gets in like a karate fight.
Yes. Yes, the karate match. I remember watching it. I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to take karate now so I can beat Freddy.
In certain ones, I'd say like 3 I think 3 is like so Dream Warriors is generally considered the cutoff of like after this you're just flying down the hill.
Institution, and that's pretty innovative, I think. And then we've talked about the second one before when we talked about Scream Queen, where the second one took its life on as like a hallmark in queer cinema. So people attached to that. So each one kind of made a stake for itself, whether they're good or not. And then, 2 or 3 years before Scream comes out, you get A New Nightmare, which is super meta. And then you get Scream a few years later, which is this very meta in like finger on the pulse teen slasher flick that plays with the tropes of horror movies, kind of like A New Nightmare did. So each one, past the first 3 kind of has its own charm, and then the last one. I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
Well, they just become, I think they become so far removed from like the spirit of the first one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And the characters become less interesting. They all just kind of become fodder to set up the Freddy bits and things like that. And like any of the other slasher franchises, it does become so convoluted, and then that whole, he'll die at the end of like every single one.
Right.
Yeah. So the next one, they got to figure out, okay, how do we bring him back? And they've like played around with different origin stories for him. Like there's a whole thing with his mother. There's like a weird religion angle.
And they carry the same characters, like 3 through 6. But I think they've changed actors like 3 times throughout those.
Yeah, there's recastings.
So what? Like, is this person? Like, sometimes they just do not look alike, and you're just like, what?
Well, we've gone this far without talking about the cast of this film.
Yeah.
And just real quick, Roger Rabbit is in this movie.
Who's Roger Rabbit?
Charles Fleischer is the doctor at the Katja Institute. That is the voice of Roger Rabbit, Benny the Cab, and several other beloved cartoon characters throughout time and space. Randomly as the doctor in the Katja Institute, which is also Robert Shea's daughter's name, I have learned through my internet research. Yes. So that was a bit of that took me out of the film a little bit. But then and then, of course, the teen idol, John Saxon, who was a Golden Globe winner for Best New Star in the 50s. And now he is a grizzled guy playing the cop in this film.
Yeah.
He often plays the cop. But the other teen idol named John, which we've not discussed yet, this is the film debut of Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I was impressed or unimpressed. I know it kind of launched him. He really didn't launch him in his film career because I know 21 Jump Street was kind of how he spent most of his 80s. But going back and rewatching the movie, did Depp stand out? Like, does Depp take you out of the movie knowing that he's such a big star there? Because I didn't know anybody else in the cast.
No, it doesn't take me out, but it makes me laugh because he's not doing this weird accent that he's adopted. So, like, seeing him before, like, this weird, like, reinvention of him is like, when we first see him and he's talking to Nancy, I'm just like, oh, he doesn't have that weird accent that he has now.
And he's not particularly remarkable in the movie. Like, you would never know if you had no context. You would never be able to. He
just has a very iconic death scene. He
has a great death scene. He wears a great tiny little jersey.
I got to talk about some of the clothes in this, but you can get to that.
I will promise on this show I will start wearing crop top jerseys.
The crop top, I don't want to. No, I won't do it. But
I'll wear
the crop top. I had to pause. I
paused.
I watched this movie on a particular purple streaming service. I don't know if we're allowed to discuss those, but the other guy who was killed, Ted or something, the guy in the jail cell, when he's looking for Nancy and he's like on the run, he's got a leather jacket with no shirt on, which is something that there was a very small window from 1983 to 1985 where that was a thing. Like that was a fashion choice.
Yeah.
But the Johnny Depp cut off at the midriff, like 3/4 sleeve jersey of some kind for a sport. He doesn't play sports. Like, I don't know what that was. The hairstyles, like, this movie is very trapped in the 80s. And we really haven't talked about the style of this particular film yet. But it blew me away how quintessentially 80s this movie felt in terms of the synthesizers, of the music, the hairstyle, the clothes.
Even the New Line intro.
Oh, the credit sequence, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like that
and I kind of hope
intro, like the big, like kind of like fades towards the bottom, like bring that back for New Line movies. I kind of wish the actual film, like, take away Freddy Krueger, take away the whole part of this movie launching a franchise. I don't think the movie movie is that good. And I was hoping there were some interesting things in it, but I was hoping just that plot would be better. I was thinking of, like, if this was a John Hughes movie, you would have a girlfriend and a boyfriend, and there's prom, and there's actually like something going on. There's like there are dynamics in a John Hughes movie between the characters that just didn't seem to really exist here. And I was wondering, I'd be curious to know if John Hughes was to direct this, or if this was The Breakfast Club. What if this, oh my God, The Breakfast Club, they go to detention on a Saturday and the school's haunted by Freddy Krueger. Why wasn't this a movie? Well, there you go.
They all fall asleep and
just go to New Line. And I said this today. Why has there not been it's time for a new Nightmare on Elm Street. We're getting a new Scream. Let's get a new Nightmare on Elm Street. And there you go. A Breakfast Club meets Nightmare on Elm Street.
They go there, the school, someone goes to the bathroom and they never come back, and they hear things in the walls, and the whole thing is haunted. Oh, at the very end, they escape, and then you see like the principal being like, they'll never come back to detention again. Like it's all a setup or something.
Because I will admit,
where was this movie? I'm gonna write this tonight, everyone.
There we go.
I'll send you the script in the morning.
You got
because the school stuff to me is some of the scariest stuff. Like when after Tina dies and we see her wrapped up in the plastic, just being dragged, like she's talking to Nancy, and then she's just dragged down the hallway in that plastic tarp. That terrifies me. Even to say that image just terrifies me. It's just the way it's shot, and like the kind of weird movement and just being dragged down just scares me. It's frightening to me.
And I think that is a big element, especially of what struck me so intensely the first time I saw it, was like Freddy's like omnipresent. He literally is like waiting around any corner for an opportunity to have any sort of power. Like, you know, that he could find you in the middle of the day at school, a situation where you would normally be safe in most horror movies, you know, and things don't usually happen in the daytime or when you're in a crowded place, when you're in public. Like those aren't usually scenes in a horror film. Whereas this, it's like all it takes is you to just nod off. And watching it again, I was like, for fuck's sake, Nancy, just stay awake. You're falling asleep so recklessly everywhere you go. And like eventually that becomes part of the movie.
That's the one thing I'll credit to the remake, which was good, was when they go to, in the remake, they go to like a pharmacy. They rob a pharmacy to get like adrenaline injections and like caffeine pills and stuff. And I thought that was good because they're like going on like 48 hours of no sleep after 72. You start like in a waking dream state. So they have to like get these adrenaline injections so they actually stay awake.
I think that was something. I haven't seen the remake. I think that's something that this film circled around but kind of missed. Her struggle to stay awake. I think they really could have done more with. I mean, I know they had the bottle where like it looked like the prop person wrote in marker on there, you know, pills to stay awake from Acme or something. But like, I didn't really feel like there was much of a struggle with the characters. I guess I just wanted the actual film to be better, and then all the Freddy Krueger stuff on top of it, as opposed to the film just like biding time for. I thought the most interesting, the scene that got closest to an interesting main story, when the mom, when she gets the fedora out of the dream. She's in the hospital and she's able to steal the fedora out of the dream. And then the mom has it, and she comes into the kitchen, and the mom puts the fedora in the drawer. And she's like, oh, I don't have it. I threw it away. I'm protecting you. I threw it away for you. But she's blocking the fedora, and she's also blocking a bottle of vodka, which she is also, which you see in multiple other scenes.
Yeah.
Like she's carrying that thing around like that's like her prop. And I really thought at that moment there was something here where the mom is trying to protect the daughter from the hat, but she's also trying to protect what seems to be like rampant alcoholism. Yes. And I'm like, this is interesting. There's actually something here. There's a struggle between the mother and the daughter, the son and or the father and the daughter. There's something here, and then the movie is going to be on top of that. That really didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why I thought it would have, but I was hoping that there would have been a better horror movie for the horror stuff to be on top of.
And that's the thing we've talked about sometimes.
I'm also a film major, so I expect higher standards.
Yes, of course. You're a connoisseur. We talk about this sometimes, though. I mean, it's not uncommon in horror, even in films that are sort of revered as classics, that the characters in them just sort of become fodder for whatever the antagonist or the threat is, because that's part of the experience. Is you go there to see scary things happen. You need somebody in the movie for them to happen to, and usually they don't get to survive that. So a lot of times characters will be sort of underwritten or underdeveloped. It's a good point that there's not necessarily a ton of these characters other than they're just kind of dumb kids, But I guess that makes them ideal for something like Freddy Krueger, who feels like that's what he preys on, or dumb, senseless kids who don't know any better. Nancy's the one you care for the most, but she's also the protagonist, and you don't get a lot about her, or what she's dealing with, or what her perspective on life is prior to all of this happening. You don't really get a lot to work with and understand.
I'm not sure Wes Craven really, no offense, may he rest in peace, I'm not sure Wes Craven really cared either about what she was going through. He was more interested in I would think this horror stuff.
Sure. And I think he's done, Scream's obviously it's many years later, but that's him, I think, really getting, what it means to create, characters with dimension and nuance that you actually do invest in. Mm-hmm. Big difference between Scream 2 is all the characters carry over, whereas this, it's new characters every time. So almost everyone's dead at the end of this, other than, arguably, well, no, I was going to say arguably for Nancy, but and we'll talk about the ending, because I think this still has one of the most bizarre endings ever.
Yeah, it was unexpected.
Nancy comes back in the third one, and they don't really ever spend a lot of time explaining how that works out.
Well, she's like an intern at the hospital, right? In that one.
Yeah, she's basically leading a support group that turns into the Dream Warriors, which is a group she's
teaching these kids how to protect themselves in their dreams.
Yeah. And also doing a study with anti-dream medicine that becomes a huge kind of MacGuffin through all the movies, all the way up till Freddy versus Jason, which I see apparently there was Freddy versus Jason in the match that was uploaded today with Ramirez and Wiggins, which I didn't even know was uploaded. So I'll have to watch that and see if I can.
No, we got to watch. We're gonna watch the CPOV version.
We'll just do one at the end of this instead. We'll
do our own watch along.
Yeah. I'll have to see if I got
do it in character. I would have missed. I would have got that. That's me watching every Schmoedown match. I would have got that.
Yeah. Perfect first round.
Anyway, sorry.
Yes. What were we saying? So yeah. So I see what you're saying with the characters. There's not much to them, especially Nancy's friends. Tina, who's quite literally just the setup to show how Freddy works. She's just in the film so that you can have this amazing chase sequence and experience the visuals for the first time. But her death, Tina, was that was the moment for me as a kid where it really that's where I was petrified. The scene of seeing the scratches, I can remember that very vividly freaking me out. Which now
because you think she's safe,
right?
They're out of the dream world. They're back in the real world. And then the scratches, and then all the blood.
Yes, so much.
And I thought this was the best. I thought this was the best scene in the movie. I wasn't because to this point, I wasn't sure what the budget was. I wasn't sure what the tone was going to be. We hadn't really seen gore yet, and to see all the blood and to see what I imagine the camera was turned upside down because you have her on the ceiling, so it's the same. Yeah, Fred Astaire, Electric Boogaloo, like the camera on the ceiling bit. But I thought that was the most. I just wasn't expecting it, but I also thought it was the most interesting visual scene we had.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, the practical effects, because I remember watching like a Wes Craven documentary, and yeah, that scene they used like a rotating like set. It was just like a box, and it would rotate. Everything
they use it again for. They use it again for Johnny Depp's death scene as well, right?
Yeah. So
yes, with all
that's seeing how they did that, and even with like the latex wall when he like presses in over Nancy, they just used a latex wall and had him press against it. So I do love the practical effects in this. I think they hold up very well.
Yeah, a lot of creative little tricks in this movie.
Yeah.
For what ultimately shakes out to be a relatively cheap movie. I think it was a little more expensive than they wanted because, like you mentioned, Connor, New Line was like headed towards the gutter, and they were like having a really hard time keeping investors in the movie because it kept getting more and more expensive. But I think it boiled down to like a $1 million movie, and they made like
1.1 million.
But like 50, they made their budget back 57 times over, which shows you why they made like 10 more of them. But yeah, they're just little creative tricks like that. And I think because that Tina's death does still look so good. And like you said, Ty, you think she's not only you think she's safe, but okay, even once you go, oh, he's killing her. Things that still don't make sense in our world are happening. Like she flies up to the ceiling and is crawling across the ceiling. And it really did. It was so haunting as a kid to see that was finally the moment where I was like, I want to turn this off so deeply, and I cannot bring myself to move out of fear of what will happen. Like that, there's only a few movies as a kid that did that, but this is the one that really distinctly sticks out to me. And it's got so many great iconic little things like the scene leading up to Tina's death where he stretches his arms out, which I guess was like they had, stagehands with like fishing rods on both sides of him, and they were just reeling in these big long prosthetic arms. And it's the first time you really see him too. Is these
that was part of the Scarecrow vibe that this guy could stretch and could be anywhere and do anything.
Yeah,
which again, when I saw it, I thought that was a weakness that they made a character that didn't have any rules. And now hearing you two speak. Now I'm realizing that's actually is why he's scary, is because there are no rules. Yeah,
exactly. Because as a horror movie viewer, if there's a set of rules, you know them. Yeah. And, in the real world, if I abide by these rules, I'll be safe. If I'm not going to a summer camp, I'm going to be safe. This one, there's no rules, so there's no escape from the possible haunting of Freddy Krueger.
The one rule that remains throughout all of these, and especially prevalent in this, no premarital sex. You're going to die immediately.
Right.
It happens in
and
this.
Of course, Rod, the cops come in, horrific murder, blood everywhere, body on the ceiling, and it's Rod.
Well, the adults, I think, coming back and watching this through the lens of now being an adult, it's interesting too. I think an element that was probably lost on me when I was younger, it has this sort of Stephen King quality of like all the adults in town are just kind of shitty and corrupted, dead inside. Especially her parents, because they're carrying the stain of the murder that they did collectively as
we need to discuss that.
So they get into the origin of Freddy in this. I couldn't remember I couldn't remember if they touched on it at all in this or if they waited. And like I said, it gets I would say fleshed out as the series continues, but by fleshed out, it just becomes increasingly convoluted and contradictory to like what the last movie did. Oh,
that's interesting. Okay, so my thought when they did the backstory, my thought was all these, whether it's parents of murdered kids or the teens, the peers of murdered kids, that they would come together for revenge on a serial killer, a serial molester. I thought that was a more interesting movie. And I do they talk about it throughout the history of the films and the TV show? Do they go into that backstory?
Yes. We see eventually Freddy Krueger before he was a burn victim. It gets there. Like
see him as a child in one of them.
Yeah, in this one, he's like just a child killer. But as they go on, you realize it's more than that. He was preying on these children, and then like eventually we find out like I can't even remember how deep they go into it, but they go deep into it, and it gets to some weird places.
I just thought I thought it was just a film about the vigilantes, whether they're teens or the parents, going after a killer would have been. I mean, I don't know if that's it. I mean, they're kind of get together to go after the guy, the killer, the spirit. But I just thought that would have been an interesting film as well. I just wondered if they covered it.
Sort of. And there's stuff where with his childhood and like, it's baked in from birth that he's this avatar of evil, based on his conception all the way up to his childhood and how he was raised and and again, there's like a weird religious angle to it. And for this, I know Craven had come in and his original pitch was he had the pedophile angle in there as well. And he got a lot of pushback from the studio. I think specifically because there had been, a huge sort of, I don't know if spree is the right word. There was some specific incident in California of some like huge sort of molestation scandal or something like that had come to light in recent years, and they thought like, it'd feel too exploitative of that, and it just wouldn't be good. And it was probably
it's funny that they're like, oh, we can't make him a molester of kids. Let's have him kill kids. Like that was somehow better.
Yeah.
But then in the remake, he's a molester, and you cast Jackie Earle Haley, who has played child molester in Little Children, who was nominated for an Oscar. So this poor guy. I'm glad he's getting a paycheck.
But played a child molester. Yeah.
I also learned that Jackie Earle Haley had I just recently learned he actually auditioned for Johnny Depp's part in this movie.
Yeah, they went to auditions together, and he auditioned for it. Yeah.
JT's in the chat. Oh, I didn't know that.
Chat. Remake, one of the worst things to ever be remade. Yeah,
it is. There are some moments that I like in it, but overall, it is a bad movie.
Yeah, it's not. It's got some interesting ideas, but the execution is just.
I like Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy, but it's just wasted.
Yeah, I mean, it is weird that Robert Englund's last time at that role is Freddy versus Jason, which is also the last canonical entry into these movies. Because the reboot's obviously something different.
So again, I haven't seen that either. How does that work?
It's great. I think it's great.
So good.
What are they doing? What are they versing?
Well, during Jason Goes to Hell, during
that's the thing about this. Not only do you have the convoluted Elm Street canon to get you there, you also have the convoluted.
Jason Goes to Hell, and he gets blown up. He gets annihilated. Jason gets annihilated, and his mask lands in this dirt, and hell opens up, and you see Freddy's claw come up and grab him down, grab the mask down, and then we get Freddy versus Jason, where Freddy invades Jason's nightmares.
If I remember, it takes place in Springwood, but the angle of it is that it's been so many years removed from the original events of these movies, and that the adults now have basically put together this pact where they won't talk about Freddy. They try to forget him. They never the new generation can't find out about him, because if nobody knows he exists, they can't be scared of him, and by extension, he has no power. So he invades the parent dreams of dead Jason Voorhees, who's dreaming but also a zombie, and basically reawakens him and sends him to Springwood to start killing teens. So everybody will think it was Freddy, and then they'll be scared of him again. But then he gets mad because Jason gets all the credit for the kills. So now he's like, I need to kill Jason on top of also killing these kids. So it's a very convoluted excuse to have these two characters fight.
There was a scene in the 84 movie where, Nancy's begging the mom, tell me about Jason, tell me about the story. You can't get away with that 2003 on, because you can just Google it. It's because something's going to be there about it.
That's a great point. Yeah, there would be so many podcasts about Freddy.
Hold on. JT Freddy versus Jason versus Ash would have been amazing. Was this a thing? Was this like the
I think he's just booking. I think he's doing some fantasy booking. I would take Ash.
I think there was a comic of that, perhaps.
That would have been amazing.
I think
I would be all for Ash. Ash would, just dominate them. So
throw Dom Toretto in there. We got a fatal four-way.
At the very least, I think you could have probably bargained like a Freddy Ash crossover, because there's so much back and forth between Craven and Sam Raimi homaging each other. This has Nancy watching Evil Dead, which was a response to a Hills Have Eyes poster in the background, and in Evil Dead, and then Evil Dead 2, they do it again because Freddy's glove is hanging in the basement of the house in Evil Dead 2. So they had this sort of back and forth homage. JTE said this was a supposed sequel, but it never took off, so they made it a comic. So there was a comic book. Okay.
And as we know, Sam Raimi's For the Love of the Game was a homage to Music of the Heart by Meryl Streep.
Chris says the third act of that movie was hilariously awesome. I imagine you mean Freddy versus Jason, and you get
Freddy Slug.
Yeah, there's a big Freddy Slug. There's the other thing I remember is there's a very blatant like Jay and Silent Bob Jay ripoff character.
Yeah,
it's a mess. It's a very early. Just the soundtrack's all new metal. Like it's so.
Oh yeah, which is the best part. You get some Blimp in there. You get some. I believe Linkin Park was in there. You get a lot of shit.
Definitely like some Slipknot. Like it's so of its time. And I actually am surprised they never made any sort of follow up to it, because from what I remember, it's not a popular critically acclaimed film, but it did very well, and it was very anticipated. So I'm surprised maybe they just couldn't like negotiate anything that was worth.
Who owns the rights to Freddy Krueger right now?
That's a great question. It's only still convoluted with these characters. It's Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's gonna. So you're saying he's gonna be in Space Jam too? Is what you're implying here?
I think he probably is. Yeah. He probably is. Which
LeBron to Bugs to Krueger.
It would not be.
Balls deflated.
It wouldn't be that jarring to see him play basketball, because he may as well. He's been on skateboards and later entries. He's worn sunglasses. He turns into a baby. Like there's
smart. He's smart when he built the glove. He only did the four fingers. The thumb was not covered with a knife. So that thumb is opposable.
He has to grip things.
He's got to grip the things that he's slashing.
I remember that being a big thing for New Nightmare. It was like he put one on the thumb. Now he's really serious. He's got 5 blades and
one for the thumb should have been the tagline for the 5th movie. They show the 5th blade. That would have been good. I just have some random things that I wrote down. Last House on the Left was Wes Craven's first film, and the villain in that movie was Krug.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So. Is that a coincidence that Krug and Krueger?
I've seen some nonsense theories before that, like, they're the same character. Krug died and became Freddy Krueger, but no, I think it's just a happy coincidence. Although Wes Craven, I guess, had like based Freddy Krueger on a lot of different things from his personal life, like his appearance was based on like a hobo that scared Wes Craven as a child,
and the whole story of the Sorry, while I cracked this Saturday open. The whole story was based on a report that he saw about, I think they were like prisoners of war from some country during Vietnam. And they were so terrified they couldn't sleep. And when they did sleep, some of them ended up dying in their sleep.
Yeah, and I think the bizarre part of it was like, it wasn't as if they died of a heart attack or like an aneurysm. It was truly like an unexplainable string of deaths that just randomly would happen as people slept. And he was like, I can't believe no one's connecting these cases and like researching it further. Like this is so bizarre and fascinating. And he sort of, he took it from there and made it a slasher villain out of it. And I guess Fred Krueger was a kid who bullied him when he was a child. Yeah. Like, imagine being that.
Okay. So there was a backstory there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're lucky I don't have a film career, Dylan Olmstead.
Get him.
Gonna come for you. When Ronnie Blakely was talking about the child molesting, an ice cream truck drove by my house and started playing the kids like music. I thought that was scary. When Nancy says, "Okay, Krueger," she's about to enter the dream again and beat Freddy. She goes, "Okay, Krueger." My Google went beep, beep. I guess "Okay, Krueger" and "Okay, Google" are close enough. That was also scary. So those are probably the two scariest real life things that happened to me.
The movie was affecting your
real
life.
Ronnie Blakely, star of Nashville, was Bob Dylan's backup singer on a couple of albums. That was he was the mom.
There you go.
I am out. Oh, and then my last note is: if you're in a horror movie and you open a medicine cabinet with a mirror or a fridge, don't close it because something will kill you immediately.
Oh yeah. We didn't talk about.
I am out of my notes.
Yeah, Connor. I want to talk about the entire third act, like not, the ending, of course, the very end specifically. But no, he didn't want to. He left.
No, he didn't want to at all.
He was like, "Never mind. I just wanted to talk about the very ending." Yeah. I want to talk about the entire third act because there's sort of this weird like Home Alone quality to it that I had forgotten.
Oh my God. I wrote that down as well. Home Alone / Skyfall. But unlike those two movies, they don't show you setting things up.
Right. They're just
like, I don't know where she got the giant Acme mallet from, or the was it? She basically lit her house on fire.
Yeah, there's that. They allude to it briefly, like where her boyfriend sees the book, where he's like, "What are you reading? Like how to bamboozle people?" Or like it's got some silly goof title. Okay. Like, yeah. I'm getting some plans at it, but like presumably these are all things she just had. She like built a light bulb bomb and lights the house on fire. I forgot all about the quality in this sort of plan, which also shows up. This is another thing that happens throughout all the movies is the protagonist always decides, I'm going to pull Freddy Krueger into our world and then he'll be powerless. Like that happens quite literally in almost every single movie. And it's always presented as like something the audience doesn't know they can do already, which it's not great. It's all the way up to Freddy versus Jason. That's their plan in that. We'll pull him out so Jason can get rid of him for us and then they can fight. It's great and stupid. But she pulls him out. She pulls him into the real world, and
that was probably the most effective jump scare because you're not sure if she's still dreaming at that point or if she's awake. And he shows up in the bedroom just kind of randomly.
I love that quality about the entire movie, which I have to imagine for audiences seeing this when it was out for the first time had to be quite a trip.
It is tough to tell if she's dreaming or not, and that is one of the more effective tricks that I think Craven does. Mm-hmm.
You as an audience, like, because she's so, by the second half of the movie, after like the sleep study and everything, it's like she is so worn out and exhausted and has to fight against that temptation to sleep. Her hair is turning gray. She's just falling apart physically as well as mentally and emotionally. And as an audience member, you get to kind of tap into that because you can never really trust that a scene you're watching won't just immediately become a Freddy Krueger scene either. There's always that danger. You think the dream scene's over, and then it's not. Like now, it's not kind of a cliche, right? The character wakes up from the dream, they're safe, and then you pan out. Oh, there's a monster there too, and then they wake up again. Like now, it's such a cliche. But like in this, it's the whole movie, and I mean, it's probably been done in some capacity before. I'm sure that it's very hard to track those types of things, but in this, I think this is really where that idea solidifies and becomes such a horror trope going forward. But they were the first to get to it because it's so just baked into the DNA of the movie here. But so when they pull Freddy out, it's been a while since I've seen this one, at least front to back. I forgot about how Freddy looks like such a dumb asshole in the ending of this movie. I think it's so funny.
He looked like was it Odo from Deep Space Nine or one of the Borg queens or something? Like he kind of looked. I wasn't as scared of him physically as I thought he was. I think part of it was the movement. Part of it, I'm a 38-year-old man and I shouldn't be scared of all of these things. But I don't think he looked. I think he looked like he could have been a happy-go-lucky kind of character rather than a horror machine.
It was just so funny to me because he falls for every single trap. Like he doesn't get clever to it. I just thought it was so funny. He gets out and he like gets one good scare. He goes but then she gets away and every single one he falls for. Like, he's not clever at all. He keeps falling, gets hit with a
doesn't
hammer.
he get a door slammed in his face?
Yeah, he gets a freaking hammer to the chest, and he's like, "Oh!" And then he keeps like it's hard to tell how much he's being injured, but he's so clumsy once he gets out of the dream world and no longer has his superpowers. She keeps setting him up, like, "Hey, Freddy, come over here." Runs across the room and falls into another trap. The light bulb explodes. Like, I forgot how
he gets the McAllister M on his hand from the hot iron. It's kind of nuts. I was not expecting that because she didn't really need to do any of that.
Right. It's hard to tell how much it's affecting him because all the stakes are like, I just got to hold him off until my dad comes over, but like he takes forever.
The table's on him. Like, he's been playing with them this whole time, messing with them. Now she's messing with him. And so it's like a cool dynamic turning of the tables where she's finally getting revenge and messing with him.
Yeah. And she is, obviously the trope of the final girl is so well known by now, but this is such a great, I think, example of it because she gets, it's not just that she survives, she truly has so much agency in defeating the monster of the movie.
She solves the puzzle.
Yeah. She figures out how to get him back there. She comes up with a plan. And it also, again, not to harken back too far, but as a kid, that level of, being afraid of something or believing in something and none of the adults will take you seriously or listen to you, like, that's something that translates very well when you're a kid because that's how it would be.
Even though I was really getting mad at the cops for not walking over across the street. She's screaming, there's smoke coming out of the house. They're like, well, maybe. Like, I did get a little riled up about that, and that I do see that appealing to kids. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, ACAB.
Yeah, right. Yeah, especially in Springwood. God, they're such doofuses. They're so dumb. I love it because they're like, there's also that weird. They're sort of in denial because they so deeply want to believe they've dealt with the problem, and I think that was something that I read Craven was very interested in, was the idea of like, the sins of the father come back to haunt the child, and that's something they have to deal with. Even though when they killed Freddy, they were, it was vigilante justice, and I guess you could certainly see it as altruistic to kill the child killer, you doing the community a service, but like how that cloud carries into their lives, and the mom's an alcoholic, and their marriage didn't work out, and the cop, the dad's a cop, but he's like not very good at his job. He's very cynical and negligent, and
that's a plot beat that he carries over into really everything, like the sins of your parents kind of falling on you. With Scream, whole thing with Sydney is the sins of her mother. So that's just it'll be interesting. I don't know if I've read anything or seen anything about why he uses that kind of plot beat in all of his movies.
Yeah, he seems very interested in the generational terror, which again reminds me a lot of like Stephen King. Like it's an obvious example, like the horror that carries over across generations, and especially in a family. He does seem very interested in that. Also, I think it's very. I know the mom's dealing with a lot, but I thought it was so weird that she keeps that glove down in the basement. She's like, "Let me show you. I kept the murder weapon."
Move my vodka bottle and.
It's the equivalent of the witch's totem in Conjuring 3. If you haven't seen that, this very real thing connected to this entity that is terrorizing your daughter. You're just keeping it in your basement.
Well, I would like to see the conversation between, I don't know how many people killed Freddy. Let's say 8. Between the 8 of them, so who gets the glove? Should we put her cards in a hat? And
all right, we're gonna keep the glove.
Rock, paper, scissors. Oh, glove! You had glove. Oh no!
It feels like there would have to be a lot of deliberation in it because, like, it's not as if they jumped him on the street and shot him or something. Like,
no.
They burned down his factory, so like they had to wait for that to clear out,
right.
And they had to get in there. And it's like, why would you want? If you're getting,
wouldn't that be the biggest piece of evidence to convict him or like?
That's a great point too. Why was that not in evidence?
Well, we don't know how the kids were murdered. We assume it's the glove, but it could have been, I don't know, it could have been something else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I thought it was so weird. The mom's approach of like, okay, I'll help you.
Well, it's like if you win the World Series, you pocket the ball if you get a chance to, and she just pocketed the glove somehow.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn this into everything wrong with
Sure.
that series. But yeah, there are some things that are like, why?
Yeah.
I don't really get that.
You can do that. I mean, horror. It's fun to do that with horror movies to some extent, especially the classics in the '80s. And there's always those silly little wrinkles that I feel like were probably even silly in the year that they were made.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It keeps them fun.
Well, Johnny Depp fell asleep with a TV on his lap and headphones on, which I have done, but it's just a laptop. Like it's essentially like he essentially invented the laptop in 1984 here with this scene. So again, that was just part of it being in the 80s, how the technology.
When are waterbeds
there was something very iconic, which I didn't realize was in this movie, but I know I've seen this before on some sort of clip show, is the tongue in the phone.
Yeah.
That was scary.
Yeah.
That was something I had forgotten about, wasn't expecting. That got me to jump off of my couch and go get ice cream from the truck.
Yeah, the tongue is great. There's so many great little visuals in it, which I think is
the hand coming out from the bathtub.
Oh, yeah, we haven't even talked about that's maybe one of the most iconic visuals of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you can clearly still see the remnants of his idea of Freddy having this weird sexual angle too, it's preying on a teenage girl in the bathtub. But yes, that very iconic visual. And even when he pulls her under, I mean, that looks great.
I remember watching on VH1, they had like decade by decade. Like I love the 70s, 80s, 90s. And I remember watching I Love the 80s on VH1, and that's like the one scene they showed about Nightmare on Elm Street. The glove coming up from the bathtub. It's just an iconic scene.
So there were two things I was expecting in this movie that I didn't see. I thought someone was going to get slashed in half from under the bed, or the glove was going to come up through someone while they were lying in bed. And I don't know if that's in another movie, but I didn't see it in this one. The second one is somebody like the face of Freddy Krueger trying to come out of someone's stomach and slicing through them. And I think that is the second one.
It is.
And I think that's part of the homoerotic stretch of the second film, where where Freddy Krueger literally comes out of someone else. So I was expecting both of those and didn't see them.
Yeah, the entire series, as dumb as it
I'm
gets,
blaming you. I'm like, why didn't I see these?
The second one, you're right in that it has this strange quality of like Freddy's sort of trying to almost take over the protagonist and become him and like have agency in the real world through him. So it's like, it's this other half of him that he's, trying to ignore and escape. And so you can very easily see the sort of allegory they're trying to write in the second one. The scene you're thinking of with the bed, I think you might be thinking of this. There's a scene in a waterbed one where like a kid gets trapped inside of his waterbed.
Oh
yeah, that's the third or fourth one. I thought Johnny Depp was on a waterbed.
He might have been on a waterbed, but there is also one.
But what I'm thinking, I'm not thinking of someone getting sucked in. I'm thinking of something going through someone. And I mean, it could be another series also. But
are you thinking about Kevin Bacon in Friday the 13th? Because he gets a machete straight through his chest, and that was another iconic.
Is that from the bed underneath?
Yes,
that probably is one.
And that's another iconic actor that is everybody like since then grew to love. That was his first role in like another iconic horror franchise. Kevin Bacon's first role, so that was also iconic. Both of them.
As dumb as the series gets from a story standpoint, and as cartoonish and non-imposing Freddy Krueger becomes as the movies progress, they do all still boast some pretty great kill scenes throughout.
Oh, absolutely.
I think the big one that's not in this, I think it's the third one, is where he becomes the TV with the arm, and then welcome to primetime, bitch. Like he's got his one-liners still, and they're still.
And I think that's why the third one, with New Nightmare, it's my second favorite one. Is that one scene? Welcome to primetime, bitch! And just shoves her into the TV.
Yeah. Freddy's he is funny in all of them, but he gets by number 4. What is that? Dream.
He was not funny. He was not funny in this movie.
Yeah,
No.
he doesn't really have jokes in this. He's very self-amused in this.
Yeah.
You know, which is just not something you see in these kinds of movies until this one. You never see any of the other ones crack a smile, or transform. Or
most of them are on the purple streaming service. Again, I don't know if we're allowed to mention them. The third one is not, but the other ones are.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the trailers. You can watch all the trailers as well as the movies, except for the first movie. The trailer is the 2010 trailer. Whatever intern programmed them screwed up because the 84 trailer is not on the purple streaming service.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because you can't even, on Apple TV, you can't even fast forward or rewind. You can only pause, which is, they have some issues there.
What a disgrace.
So sorry, we're running out of time, I imagine. What is the last, joining something Conrad said earlier, which I thought was interesting. What is the future of this type of movie? There has not been a Freddy Krueger equivalent for the last decade. What do you think is going to happen the next few years for this genre of film?
Well, I mean, I think what we're seeing is obviously they're going to bring everything back to some respect. It started with Michael Myers, and that's turning into its own trilogy. And even that, once they finish that, give it another decade, they'll come back to that one more time. They're always going to come to another pass. Scream's coming back. Jason's kind of the most complicated one because there's been like a legal battle over who owns that for like the better part of the last 10 years, if not more. I don't know that there's anything necessarily stopping them from making a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
It was just the 2010 one, really, like Platinum Dunes hasn't made they were like the king of, well, not really the king, but they had their corner of remaking horror franchises, with Texas Chainsaw and then this. They haven't done anything horror related since.
Right.
They did Quiet Place, but they haven't remade anything since. The director of the 2010 one hasn't made anything since. It really fucked the franchise, and that's a shame because there's something there that they can explore now.
I think it'll always be tough with this one because so much of Freddy Krueger is the performance. And there's many reasons to dislike the remake.
But they got Skarsgård to do Pennywise, and he was fucking brilliant. You just have to be smart. It needs to be in the right hands.
No, they got like the fourth Skarsgård though.
Again, he's very good.
Well, but like the original It miniseries, it's like really all that you go back, really all that is offering is the Tim Curry performance, and like everything else about it doesn't hold up, and you can't take.
But when they said it's a new It and it's not Tim Curry, everybody was like, it's gonna be fucking trash.
Yeah, I just think, and nothing against Jackie Earle Haley. I mean, it was a tall order, but I think he did fine with what he had, and he didn't have much. But Robert Englund, I think, is just. I mean, it's not as if like Tim Curry, he did It, and it was a 2-half miniseries, whereas like this is an entire franchise and like it's always him. So, Jason, again, Michael Myers, those characters is like, if you get somebody imposing who could like do stunts, you can swap them out through the years if you need to. But, I don't know that there's any disinterest in Robert Englund's part. I'm sure he would maybe come back. But once that option no longer becomes viable, I just don't know. It'd be really hard. I know they've floated. We mentioned him earlier. The idea of like Kevin Bacon playing him has come up.
I saw that. That's weird.
That'd be good.
I'm not sure where that comes
from.
Well,
Johnny Depp is available. I would imagine.
Well, Kevin Bacon was up for the role before Jackie Earle Haley. Kevin Bacon was, considered, so that's where that comes from, and Kevin Bacon would be good.
That's a compelling idea. Johnny Depp becomes Freddy.
That'd be good too. Yeah,
just to see how that works out. Yeah, I mean, and then just speaking largely, we're very specifically talking about the classics, but just very largely these kinds of movies. we've sort of tried to figure it out before why there's really no modern analog to these big classic slasher figures. I think, like you said, Connor, Saw's the only one I can really think of that gets close in the last sort of 20 years. I think maybe just the filmmaking and approach to these kinds of movies has changed so much. Whereas we were talking about earlier, the protagonists and the main characters, it's like there's not much to them, and what really will string the series along is the antagonist, which is kind of unique to horror. But now I think it's so protagonist focused, like Conjuring and stuff like that is all about the main characters. They repeat, they go throughout the series. It's not so much about it's kind of like superhero filmmaking in that way. It's like the villain's defeated and they don't come back in the next one. I think maybe just the way they make these movies, or like they're now so conceptual. You have stuff like Hereditary, and like those are the movies that are big now, and they don't really have that antagonist character. It's more existential or conceptual or psychological. I don't know. When they make slasher movies now, they're just kind of one-offs.
I don't think gay icon the Babadook is going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff, but there's still time.
He could come back. I don't know. What's he up to these days? But that's a great example. The Babadook. It's like it doesn't feel made to be more than one movie. But Babadook, Jigsaw. There's not a lot of costumes from the last 20 years for like horror movie characters, where I think you saw a lot more in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. I think I don't know. It's just so specific to this era, but everything comes back. I mean,
I've wanted to dress up as Ma, Octavia Spencer's Ma, but that's a lot of reasons why I can't do that.
Yeah, why not more Ma? And that's what you call it.
More Ma.
More as in the same way that
Ma too, still Ma.
It's crazy because Ma is gaining a huge following on TikTok.
Ma's good. So Ma is a horror movie that I watched and I enjoyed.
Yeah, people love Ma. They should make a second one.
Ma. Done. Mama. Ma too.
Just slowly.
Ma too. Mama.
Slowly extend out the word. Before we do wrap up, we like walked up to the edge of it, but quite didn't get there. What do we think about like the very ending of this movie?
Oh, you mean Freddy turning into a car?
It's such a weird. I always forget.
It was funny. That was the funniest part of the movie. Was the red and green stripe top of the car.
What's going on?
And I love the mannequin coming through the door. It's so beautiful. It's such a great. Yeah. It's such a great, here's a person, cut away, come back. It's a mannequin now flying through the door. It looks
I feel like Wes Craven was on a plane when they designed, shot, edited, and locked that into all in the 3 hours period. And then wrote the closing theme song and performed it and recorded it. All of Wes Craven was flying back to London, didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, he was like, fuck it, we'll do it.
He apparently did not want this ending. I guess this was like a compromise. This is a compromise ending he had come to with New Line, where I didn't read exactly like what he wanted, but I think he wanted something a little more. I mean, I guess I would say this is ambiguous, but something a little more triumphant, because again, he pictured like this would have been the end and Freddy Krueger never would come back. So he had pictured like a finite like defeat of that character and the movie would end, but they wanted to leave it open. They'd come up with this weird compromise, but like, it's really hard to even kind of know what the implication of the ending was. It's like, oh, was it? Because it's like she defeats him. It so quickly goes from she defeats him and you think the movie's over to, wait, what the fuck's going on? Like they just walk outside. It's daytime. They're like the conversation doesn't really add up to what you'd seen.
And like he attacked the mom, and that was and like the mom like disappears into the bed and like was meant to. I don't know. I don't understand. Like maybe again with the alcoholism, like maybe there was something there that they could have done more with, but it seemed like they focused a lot on the mom in the last few minutes, which was not necessary.
Yeah, they definitely wanted to like resolve the strained relationship. Like maybe the bottle, like you said, it's her prop. She is
the
carrying
bottle. Hey, who needs a prop, baby? Let's go.
And it's a very movie thing. It was like to show that things are better. She throws the bottle away. It's taken care of. It's very simple visual storytelling.
Oh, no. What she said was, I don't remember last night. I'm never drinking again. Something I've said 77 times in the last 4 years alone.
Yeah, we've all had those nights, but
I think I say that every night, every Thursday night, as soon as I get off this show.
and what she doesn't remember is being dragged to the depths of hell through her mattress after burning alive.
Yeah.
But there's such a weird
sucked out of the wind like a Goldfinger at the end of Goldfinger, sucked out of the window into the space.
It's just so weird. It's like she very clearly seems to have defeated. Like they very clearly state it. She's not afraid of him anymore, so he has no power, and he just kind of fails. It's not even like she has a big killing blow. He just kind of oh shit and just falls down and he's done. He dies. But the very next scene, there's no real time to unpack or resolve. It's like, oh, is it the next day? They don't. Oh, our friends are alive.
Nobody actually died.
So you said so. Yeah. So here's the question: how many of the kids died? Are you saying 3 or 0?
It's still not. I want to go rewatch number 3 because you would think, okay, you could reason based on this movie. I would say she never won. It was all a huge trick, and they're all dead, and she's still in a dream. Her defeating him.
I think it ends in a dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this will ever be resolved.
Well, and that's the weird thing is because Nancy comes back in 3, and so it's like, oh, well, so she did get out of the movie apparently. Like,
yeah,
she did get out and won somehow. There's some victory here, but they don't really give us time to celebrate it, and the movie just kind of ends. I mean, it's a classic horror ending, right? It's like the villain isn't really dead, or maybe they won, but there's still that twist. There's always that's so common in horror. There's that little wink at the camera at the end where it goes, oh, maybe it's not over. But this one, it is just so weird in this one. It is really ambiguous, and it doesn't really, you can't figure it out. It's like are they all alive? Are they all dead? Is this a dream? Was the whole movie a dream? And then, just slam to the funky credits at the end. And
with the big song by the band 213, which is an area code in LA. I don't know what else it is, but
and that's it. That's a Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's it. We did it. Well, thanks, guys. Connor, sorry for calling you Conrad like 3 times earlier, but
all right.
I straightened it out in my head. And Taylor, I heard the Rager might be coming to Los Angeles soon.
Well, it's all over. I'll talk to you about it.
Well, okay. Well, if the Rager needs a place to stay, JTE has space.
I was gonna say I don't think you want that in your home.
No, JTE has space.
Yeah, of course. Ty, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for giving us a reason to talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street. Because this was kind of almost an intimidating one to come to because it is so big. It's like, where do you even start? Where do you end when you talk about this? I'm sure we missed 1,000 different interesting talking points because how could you get them all with something that's so in the zeitgeist and so revered and beloved and has this huge cult following. But I think we did an all right job. I think we did okay.
I hope so.
Before we wrap up, I know you were sort of stumped by this question the other night on Outlaw Nation, Ty. But if the Ghouls and Goblins want to find you out there, where should they go? Where should they go for more time?
You can. I am on Twitter at Tyler-Lieberman, or is it underscore? This is how bad I am at these things.
Try both. You'll get one of them.
You try both. Gosh, I have to look it up. I only created a Twitter account to interact with people this year. Yeah, I'm underscore, of course. Tyler_Lieberman on Twitter, at Tyler_Lieberman on Twitter. If you really love me and you want to go to Amazon for $4, Amazon Prime, you can watch a film that I wrote over 10 years ago starring Tori Spelling. It's called Kiss the Bride. It is on Amazon Prime for rental. Kiss the Bride. The story is about a gay man who gets invited to the wedding of his ex-boyfriend, now marrying a woman. What happened? Can he stop it? What's going on? Find out. It's a rom-com. Amazon Prime, Kiss the Bride from 2008. Check that out today or visit me on Twitter.
There it is. Now that's a worthy plug.
Promo.
That's a plug right there.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Well, I'm learning. I'm testing the cages each time I show on TV.
You're getting better every time. It's great to see. Before we wrap up, of course, come back next week, next Thursday night. We will be joined by another card-carrying member of the Finstock Exchange, the outlaw John Roca himself, talking about David Cronenberg's The Fly. That one's going to be awesome. Oh, I should have probably also mentioned that we were on a podcast this past week. Connor and I, we were on. Yeah, we were on the Digesting Cinema podcast, talking about what else? David Cronenberg's The Fly. So I think we're going to be pretty seasoned experts on this film by the time the month is over.
I mean, life is just one big podcast. It's just a matter of who's taping it.
And I'm not complaining about how much I have to watch The Fly, because any excuse to see Jeff Goldblum's ass, I'm there.
What's funny is The Fly would have been my second choice. The Fly is a rare horror movie that I really enjoyed. It's gross, but it's not like there's no jump scares or anything, and there's a lot to work with between Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to hear me talk about how much I love body horror, tune in next week. So I'll talk about it.
He'll talk about it. And if you can't wait till then, check us out on the Digesting Cinema podcast. So we talked about a little bit there too. But next week is John Roca. That's going to be a huge episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we have the pleasure to broadcast to people all over the country, maybe the world. I don't know. I don't look at the analytics of this thing. But if there's
that guy in Luxembourg who watches.
Yeah. If you are like us, and I know many of our original listeners and friends from the Northeast Ohio area, you can still get tickets to the Special Wish Foundation Cleveland event here. You get to hang out and paint along with a Bob Ross certified painter. Oh my God. What a treat.
Cool.
Get tickets at a specialwishcleveland.org. I believe all the proceeds, the donations and funds do go to a Special Wish Cleveland chapter. It's a great cause. Sounds like a great time. Paint a picture. Paint a happy little tree. A happy little, happy little mistake. Paint a happy little Freddy Krueger or something. I'm sure everybody will appreciate it.
Happy little nightmare.
Happy Little Mistake was your mom's name for you, Taylor, right?
Oh my God.
Oh, sorry. The Tyrant showed up for a second.
Oh, wow.
Oh. And that's a wrap, folks.
And that's it.
and that's the show. So thank you so much for watching Golden Goblins. Thank you, Ty, for coming, hanging out with us and talking about this movie. It's been a blast. Stay spooky out there. We'll see you next week.